Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The recent attack on former Deputy Senate President Senator Ike Ekweremadu in Germany by members of the outlawed Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, continues to generate reactions from Nigerians. The Senate leadership of Nigeria has described the attack on the immediate past president of the Senate in Nuremberg, Germany, as shameful. It will be recalled that Ekweremadu was in Germany to give a keynote address at the second Igbo annual cultural festival and convention organized by Ndi-Igbo residents in Germany. Joining us now for a critical assessment of the recent attack by the outlawed Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, and Senator Ike Ekweremadu in Germany is human rights advocate and public affairs analyst Achike Chude. Achike, it's a joy having you.
It's a joy to be here.
Before we start off on this matter, I think it was only a couple of months that there was a message out that the leader of Ndi-Igbo did, stop a couple of Igbo groups in the diaspora because of the fact that there was an infiltration by IPOB. And there was that message around. I think Ndi-Igbo in America was, was put off for now, and some other Igbo cultural groups like that in the diaspora. Why did this happen?
Yeah, well, I think they had noticed maybe a troubling trend, within this cultural group, the cultural groups, and felt rightly that they needed to do something to stem the tide of whatever it is that they felt was happening. And obviously, what has just happened in Nuremberg, Germany, is perhaps a justification of the position that they have taken. But I think it also tells you really that it's not every Igbo person in diaspora that is naturally, under the control and influence of organised and Ndi-Igbo. Obviously, you have some groups outside of that who have acted in this manner. But like I said, it must be because of some of these things that they noticed, these troubling trends that they noticed that made them take that decision so that they could restructure. That's for those ones that consider themselves under the umbrella of organised and Ndi-Igbo.
A lot of the IPOB apologists have gone to Twitter and they've been awash with messages like, this is Ekweremadu's Nuremberg trial. And that has been their own catchphrase, that he didn't say anything concerning the killings of Igbos in Nigeria, and he had the power to be able to say something. I mean, is that an apt statement?
No, it is not. It cannot be apt. Of course, this is completely different from the Nuremberg, what happened in Nuremberg after the war, the Second World War, when people who had committed atrocities, members of the German army, were brought to book by the international community. So this is absolutely very different, and you cannot, relate that. The reality is that they are accusing him of not having said much about the killings in the country, especially in the southeast. But then, if that is the case, I guess a lot of politicians in this country, the elites, a lot of them fall into that category because all kinds of things have happened in this country. And when you expected people to speak, they kept silent. But beyond that, again, is the fact that the accusations they made against him were exceedingly very wrong. First of all, he has been involved. Without Ekweremadu was very instrumental to the freedom of Nnamdi Kanu when he was in detention, by the federal government. And he did a lot to ensure that Nnamdi Kanu was released. And I think he's done quite a few things in that regards. But again, what they did, I think, is abominable. Because if you want to defeat a person, especially at that kind of event, you defeat that person with ideas. And so there was no exhibition of ideas. There were no counter-narratives. If you felt that the man had sold out, whichever way, however you describe it, a sellout, you were supposed to take him on intellectually, and then debunk whatever, positions he comes up with. But I think it is because of the fact that they had nothing reasonable to say in terms of, accusing him of whatever it is that they're accusing him of. And that is why they resorted to this level of barbarity. This is not, it should be condemned, and I think has been condemned by everybody, every reasonable person. You don't resort to this kind of thing, whether in Nigeria or beyond the shores of this country. But again, one other aspect of that, why not justifying anything? Like I said, it is abominable what they did to him, and it shows again the level of the thinking of the people who were behind this. But beyond that, again, is the fact that somebody made a statement and we take it maybe with I wouldn't say with a pinch of salt. He said that, look, Ike Ekweremadu received a beating on behalf of the Nigerian political elites. You might want to look at it and say, no, there is no connection. But the reality is that Nigerians are not happy. And it's not just about, the IPOB and so on across the, the board in this country. Across geopolitical, boundaries, Nigerians are not happy with the state of affairs in the country. And so not too long ago, we know that a senator of the Federal Republic was attacked, I think, in one of the northern states, because he had not been going home for a very long time, and people did not see what he was contributing to the national, to their own resolving their own contradictions. They could have it's also about, but even the issue, the issue is this. The issue is this: when you see these things, it's a sign. It's a sign of what is going on in the country, that people are losing, interest, even in the political process, that in the ability of the people to resolve their contradictions within the political process, is being lost. And that is a very dangerous thing. But like I said, there is no way anybody can justify what these people did to Ike Ekweremadu. They have shown the level of thinking that they exhibit. They have shown, and it's an exhibition of barbarity, and mindlessness, and should be condemned, and I think has been rightly condemned by every reasonable person in the country. They do not have that right.
But this happened on foreign soil. Doesn't it show a lot about who we are as a people?
No, I do not necessarily think so. Whether you exhibit abnormal behavior, in Nigeria, or you exhibit it in a foreign country, it just goes to show something about your state of mental health, your state of thinking. And that's what I'm saying. So it's irrelevant whether it happened there. The action itself is very negative. The action itself is reprehensible and condemnable and abominable. And so whether it happened in Germany or it happened in the US or it happened in Nigeria, it is the same value that you attach, to this action. It was very, very wrong. But again, you also have to realize that there's a growing, sentiment of despair, of hopelessness among Nigerians abroad. And that's why you tend to have this feeling that Nigerians who are abroad are more radically disposed in terms of what they feel as the solutions, what should be the solutions to the problems of the country. And why do I say so? There's a positive and a negative in that sense. You have seen, presidents being, at a time, the Nigerian president being told to go home when he came to the UK for medical treatment, because he had a duty. They felt he had a duty to be in Nigeria to fix medical.
Others are even citing the case of Olusegun Obasanjo that was pelted.
Do you understand?
With eggs,
exactly.
With eggs, and saying, is this the right treatment for Ekweremadu?
Now, why are they doing that? Perhaps they are also enjoying the freedom, or the liberalism in the political process in those other countries. You cannot do that in Nigeria without being shot by the security forces in the first place. So when you want to express your angst at government, then you must do it within certain boundaries. Abroad, they have this leeway, and perhaps that is why they are holding better, their political leadership accountable. But beyond that is the fact that the average Nigerian, as much as at the slightest opportunity he has, he wants to leave the shores of this country. He's not doing it, from a position or from a perspective of, I'm going for, generally for a better life only but they are doing it out of the belief that they do not have a choice. At the back of their minds, they all want to come back to this country. At the back of their minds, they all want to contribute to national development in this country. So for as long as they continue to hear stories of vice, stories that are inimical to the progress and interests of this country, they realize that they cannot come back to their country. And so they tend to have a more radical disposition to some of the problems or the malfeasance that is going on in this country, than the average Nigerian. I wouldn't say this because we are used to it, but somewhere within them, they harbor the thought that if it is well with this country, if it gets better for this country, that they will one day want to come back, and contribute their own quota to national development. And so, but with this, level of perfidy, the way I would see it, that happened in Nuremberg, they have just shown themselves really as a bunch of.
Who are they?
The people who engage in this whether you call it dastardly act or this negative act against Ekweremadu. And like I said, if you want to take up somebody at that level, over what he has done or failed to do, I think it can be done in a better way. I think you can take him up on his role in this country as Deputy Senate President. He has been in the Senate since 1999, or in the National Assembly since 1999 till date. Then you take him up on all of those things that he has failed to do and the ones that he has been able to achieve. And then, put it on a scale and decide whether you think he's been a bad person or he's been a good person. And they did not do this. They did not even give him the right to respond. And like I said, virtually all the accusations that they made against him, I think, were wrong. He was instrumental to the fact that, that Nnamdi Kanu was released from prison when he was in prison. He played a major role.
But a lot of people say
Senator
Habaribe, did put himself down, when the bill had to be perfected for Nnamdi Kanu and things like that. That it wasn't Ekweremadu that put himself down.
No. It doesn't matter. I mean, somebody had to. Ultimately, it's about choice. Somebody made himself available. You understand? But the reality is that he was not the only one that was concerned. He was not the only one that made attempts to ensure that Nnamdi Kanu was released. Ekweremadu played a role there. I know that. I mean, we are reading about his activities then, and so many other people from the Southeast also played roles to ensure that Nnamdi Kanu was released. But the reality is that regardless of whatever position IPOB is taking with regards to the Nigerian Federation and how they perceive what is going on in this country. And they have a genuine case to some extent. We know that things are bad. We know about the issue of marginalization and so many other things that's going on. We know that the country is going through very serious difficulties, virtually across the length and breadth of Nigeria. But still, in the midst of that, you don't resort to this kind of primordial behavior. I don't think it resonates well with even people who have sympathy for IPOB, and who have sympathy to the problems of IPOB. Yeah.
Okay, so primordial behavior, but is the sentiment primordial?
No, I mean the reality is that the law gives people a right to protest. It gives people a right to disagree with you. It gives people, I'm talking of the fundamental human rights now of the average person. It gives people the right to express an opinion and to have an opinion and all of that.
Okay,
so
we'll come back. We'll talk more about this after this quick commercial break. All right, just stay with us. Still a morning show here on Arise News. All right, still a morning show here on Arise News. And I was talking about are this sentiments primordial, the sentiments of IPOB, and I also want you to, put that question in the same breath with this. The Ndi-Igbo is saying that it's been greatly, outdone by the IPOB, and there are some chapters pretty much that of the Ndi-Igbo that IPOB runs. Pretty much in some parts of the world. What would you say about that?
No, well, let's even start with that. The reality is that there is a sentiment that resonates beyond Nigeria. The IPOB, the Biafran sentiment resonates beyond Nigeria. And if Ohaneze acknowledges that indirectly by saying, look, they have closed down some chapters of Ohaneze internationally because they believe that they have been infiltrated. They are talking about IPOB infiltrating them. So it tells you that all over the world, in many countries of the world, that the presence of IPOB is being felt. So what it tells you again about the organization is that it is not just rooted in Nigeria. It is beyond the shores of this country. And so what it means is that there is a sentiment that is pervasive, that is not just limited to a few people, but it is becoming the sentiment of not all the people, but a large segment of the people. And that is something that should be worrisome to the Nigerian state. Of course, by the time we saw what was happening in the Southeast at the time, they give an order. The government goes ahead to give a counter order, and the people decide to listen to that of IPOB. It tells you that there's a problem in the country.
And government submit to begging them.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And saying,
exactly. Now people try to say it is because of the climate of fear that IPOB had sown, but that is not the truth. The reality is that a vast majority of people, believe in what the IPOB is doing and what the IPOB is saying. And why is that so? As against what the Nigerian state is saying. What it means is that the erosion of confidence in the Nigerian state has gotten to a peak in the Southeast, and that is dangerous. So what a government that is nationalistic, a government that is patriotic, does is having recognized that these are also people, these are also Nigerians. We have a duty not just to other peoples, but we also have a duty to these people to give them a feeling of belonging, in this country. Unfortunately, we do not see that from the Nigerian state because of the kind of political actors that we have on the stage in Nigeria. But beyond that, again, is the fact that the sentiment is not, their action could be primordial, their action could be reprehensible.
What sentiment?
But there's a sentiment also that runs through the IPOB ideology, like I have just said, that a lot of people have caught on to. They might not necessarily agree with the issue of secession, but they might agree with the issue for equity and justice in this country, which is denied the Southeast. And you could also make argument other parts of the country. But because the Southeast has made much noise about it, for those who say, look, after all, every other part of this country is suffering, I think that is begging the question. The reality is that he who knows, who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. So if the Southeasterners, for instance, can agitate it in the way and manner they have done, and others do not do that, then you cannot blame them, for that, because they're exercising their fundamental rights.
But the major conversation is no Southeasterner have been president for quite a while in this country. I mean, if you look at the sentiment across board, is the fact that the Yorubas and the Hausas deliberately, have a way of, pushing the Southeasterners after the Civil War out of, politicking in this country. Right. But it goes straight to the question that if you are to present a Southeastern candidate for presidential elections in this country now, who will float the candidate, IPOB or Ndi-Igbo? Who will get the biggest endorsement?
No. I think even the question might not be too relevant, really. I think ultimately it is something that will have to be decided by the people, regardless of whether the person is an IPOB person.
But you need his endorsement.
Whether it's IPOB or whether it's from Ohaneze or outside of these bodies, the reality is that they all have qualifications because they're all Nigerians. The Constitution gives them certain rights, and part of these rights is the right to contest, for electoral offices in the country. So I guess that there will have to be some kind of politicking that will have to take place over there. Now, it depends on those who have been able to sell themselves to the Nigerian people. But again, if you're talking about, a presidential candidate, either endorsed by IPOB or Ohaneze, that of Ohaneze might not be as tricky as that of IPOB. What it means is that IPOB, for instance, to present a presidential candidate, must be a presidential candidate that believes in the unity and in the progress of this country, that must believe in the rights of other, parts of this country, other ethnic groups to survive and to progress in the context of one Nigeria. So we cannot replace, cannot have, for instance, a presidential candidate from the Southeast or any part of the country that believes that the country belongs to him and maybe to his own, part of the country. And I think that has been part of the problem. But there's some sentiments
across board that we've had other people in presidency that have believed that way.
Well, yeah.
Or that have acted that out that way in terms of appointments.
Yes, yeah. No, well, you see, and that is part of the problem.
Sectional sentiments.
Once you do that, you're going to have problems. And I want to believe that perhaps more than any other government, we have seen exactly this kind of scenario with this government. I mean, it is not as if other governments have not harbored, at least at the level of the presidency, have not harbored or favored to some extent, certain ethnic, certain groups, maybe in most cases where they come from. But I think what we have seen in this country is unheralded, unprecedented in terms of, even look at the security architecture of this country. And believe me, for a government that says that it is desirous of peace, it is desirous of having the right kind of impression, at least in the minds of Nigerians, by the time you begin to go this way, by the time you begin to play identity politics to this very level, then you will not have the kind of broad-based, participation in governance that every government that wants to achieve, would have. You are not going to get people's participation because people are going to perennially see you as a person that is joindiced, a person that, look at the president's famous speech, which people said was plagiarized at the time, but plagiarized or not, it was a fantastic, statement. I am for everybody and for no one, and people embraced it, and people loved it, and people supported it for that. You understand? Yeah, but what people have seen, after that is the exact opposite of that statement itself.
People like the civil society. So take, for instance...
No, Nigerians, it's not civil society. Everybody...
What has happened today? There was supposed to be a symposium, you know, to talk about the way forward for the country and things like that. Wole Soyinka, other top people under the ages of civil society, still on the fringes of revolution now. But we hear that the venue has been shut down by, you know, some security operatives. Department of State Security and some other operatives out there shut down the venue.
Well, you see, these are also part of the issues we are talking about. And you ask yourself, and this is supposed to be a democracy. This is supposed to be 20 years of unbroken democracy, the so-called unbroken democracy. And so you want to tell yourself that after 20 years, you know, I mean, within 20 years, would have advanced to a very large extent in terms of the ethos and the ideals of democracy. This is not what we are seeing. And again, coincidentally, the topic of even the discussion today was supposed to be, you know, repression, democracy, and something under the Nigerian state, something to that effect. And so we see the act of repression by the state security agencies in a democracy run by a civilian regime, civilian administration, that kept on talking as the rule of law. That kept on talking about the rule of law. You know, even before the election of 2015, and that should be used, one of those issues that should be that would be used to dislodge the other government that was no longer, you know, practicing or living true to the rule of law. So early in the early hours of this morning, the combined team of the DSS and the Nigerian police surrounded an events venue somewhere in Oregon, where a discussion was going to take place, an intellectual discourse was going to take place involving people like, you know, Wole Soyinka and some other prominent, Femi Falana and some other prominent Nigerian citizens. You know, therefore, scuttling them or scuttling or putting at bay their freedom to freely associate and to have a discourse on the happenings within the polity, within their country. And I think, and you ask yourself, what has changed? This is not a military administration, but what we are seeing, and a lot of people creeping or encroaching, you know, dictatorship that we are seeing. We are beginning to see some level of full-blown dictatorship, and we have always made this argument that, you know, you do not dispense with a military. You know, with dictatorship, simply because you have removed those people in khaki and military boots and then replaced them with civilians. We have had civilian dictatorships in many parts of the continent. We had that under Mobutu Seko in Zaire. We had that under the butcher of the Central African Republic, Jean Bede Bokassa. We had that under Idi Amin Dada in Uganda. We have that in Cameroon right now, and in many parts of the continent. So we are beginning to see, you know, a dictatorship that is worrisome in this country, where people who gather for intellectual discourse, you know, are now being marginalized and being prevented from participating in the affairs of their country. And I think that is wrong. Okay,
I'd like to say a very big thank you to Achike Chude. We'll see how the news unfolds. All right, that brings us to the end of the show today. It's been another great day today, the 19th of August. My name is Rufai Hussaini, and that's the morning show for you today. Have a great day.